there had never been a person that had broken the sub 4 minute mile in Delaware. Like, wait a second, this is actually something that I really want to do.
Yeah.
Who cares if it's the right thing to do? And it ended up being one of the most fulfilling races still in my career, was getting to be on my old high school track, breaking 4, winning that race.
All right, I'm Doug Adams and very lucky to be joined by Sam Parsons here today. Sam Parsons is a professional runner, amongst many other things, but he runs for Adidas and Tinman Elite, as well as the German national team, and has been on multiple world stages at world championships, German national championships, and really has seen a great running career so far with lots of exciting things to come. And I'm really excited today because Sam is an athlete that I've worked a lot with over the past couple of years, and he is somebody that is just really easy to cheer for. And that's what I really hope we can convey here, just a little bit of the story. It's an Olympic year. There's lots of exciting things going on with track and field. And I thought Sam would be great to share some of the knowledge that has really helped him, as well as just a chance for us to see his story and cheer for him with all the fun upcoming events here. So, Sam, thanks for being
Doug.
on.
Thanks for being here, man. I certainly wouldn't still be running at this point in my career if it wasn't for you. So I'm happy to be sitting down and doing this together.
Yeah, the pleasure's all mine, so thank you. Yes, so I know Sam really well, so I kind of want to just jump in a little bit and get a little background story. Sam and I we're in Delaware right now. Everyone knows where Delaware is, I'm sure, but we're in Omega Project, the PT clinic here, and Sam and I are both from Delaware, although that's not exactly how we met in Delaware. But Sam, we've shared a lot of your background and stories, and I think one of the things that really stands out, and I love to hear about, and would like the audience to hear just about why they should care about you too. Kind of give us a little background on where you got your competitive spirit from, and where is that? You're such a fierce competitor, and I really would love to share, like, where did that start, and what is that like now as you're on the elite of the elite stage? But where did that begin?
Yeah, it's definitely, as far as like competitiveness right now, it's definitely incredibly daunting at times, when you are getting on a starting line and you look to your left and you look to the right and you're looking at world record holders, you're looking at, like people that are the cream of the crop, and there definitely can be imposter syndrome there. And there's definitely been moments like that. And I think that learning how to foster and manifest your own confidence within yourself and reaffirm your competitiveness is something that is so important and crucial to performing at a high level, and performing in those like highly intense, stressful situations when you're in a stadium and there's 50,000 people, and it's not like you can pass the ball off to somebody. Right. It's you versus you, and I think there's a lot of beauty in running within that within itself, And my competitiveness has certainly changed over time, but I learned early on when I was a kid that I was willing to suffer. And I think that is kind of like the thing I remember most, was when, as early as, I think, when I first was really like pushed in my life, I certainly was like challenged by my dad at times, but I think the first time I really was, pushed to my limits, and I wanted to push those limits, were at the summer swim leagues practices, where I would bike a mile to practice with my sister from like my house in Newark, bike through all the little neighborhoods and get to like the Persimmon Creek Swim Club, shout out Piranhas. And we had this coach, Steve Early, and this was just some fun summer swim league, and I know that's what it sounds like, but as you know, swimming also for Oakland's,
Go Slugs.
It was a big deal. It was a big deal,
Oh.
And there was a lot of competitiveness. There's a lot of team spirit around it, and Steve basically would give us these speeches, before practice and after practice, about how we have North Star coming up, or we have this team coming up, and like we need to give it our best today, and that would rile me up.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I need to do this for Steve. Like, I need to be my best for Steve this weekend. And it got to the point where he started challenging people to start doing dry land after the swim practice, which is basically like an additional 10 to 20 minutes of core work, squats, just on the pool deck, just strength training. It's what it was. It was my, like, when I look at it now, it was my first introduction to any type of like PT work or, extra little things to up my athletic performance, outside of just doing the activity itself. And Steve then eventually figured out, who were the kids that were staying after, and who were the kids that weren't, And then once he weeded those people out, then all of a sudden he had this core group of kids that really wanted to be there and really wanted to push hard and really wanted to like score points at those big meets in the weekends throughout the summer. And he then added in endurance tests where we would do planks, for example, or we do wall sits. And he would literally just start the clock and walk away, or like watch from afar. And just watch to see who would drop.
Who's going to break first.
And who was going to break first. It was totally like a, like I think of like the, survivor challenges, where it's like, how long can you hold on to the pole and things like that. Maybe that's where he got it from. But I was obsessed with beating the older kids.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to prove myself because they were faster than me in the pool. But mentally, I figured out that if I was willing to really suffer, and I didn't care how sore I was the next day, because I would completely wreck myself to hold the plank and will myself to beat Sam Crawford and, Craig, these guys that were just so cool and they were older and they were kind of the seniors, the eighth graders, It's funny to say eighth graders, because it's like, I was probably, I was like 8 and 10 years old. And eventually then it kept growing and he kept figuring out new tests and challenges for us. And I remember one in particular was we did like a biathlon where we did like a running one. Yeah. And I just could torch everyone on the run. And then I'd have this big head start going to the pool, and everyone would catch me in the pool. Like I was an okay swimmer. But yeah, that was definitely where the competitiveness, I think, first manifested. So Steve Early, I think the world of him, and for a coach to pour so much heart into these young kids is something so cool. And I think a lot of like maybe parents thought he was, crazy the way he would like get down, and like I'm sure your coaches were like this too, but like get down in your face like as you're swimming, like move, stroke, go, like going nuts. And that was the world to me, and trying to impress him and was a big part of it too, just because I looked up to him so much. And then when I moved through, high school and I gave up swimming and eventually transitioned into running, then I went to Tatnall and had Patrick Castagno, my high school coach, who then flooded me with even more inspiration when it came to goal setting and dreaming. And he was the one that then taught me how to dream, because being competitive and being passionate about something, or being willing to work hard, and competitiveness will only take you so far unless you have the dreaming aspect with it. And so I got that from Steve, the competitiveness, and then Coach Castagno then taught me how to dream. That's what I always say, is like Castagno taught me how to dream. And giving someone the gift of teaching them how to dream and instilling confidence in them to dream, I think is the greatest gift that you can give to someone as a coach or a practitioner, or even a teammate. So I've been incredibly fortunate to have those mentors at a young age to foster that, to allow me to then dream big enough to even think that I could do it professionally.
And anybody that's worked with Sam knows that started at 8 and he's only accelerated since then, where it's gotten like more. And that's one of the things I think what you're talking about isn't just for running. Like you said, it could be any professional. It's that extra element of, are you willing to do what nobody else is willing to do? Are you going to push yourself beyond that comfort level and get there? And whether, I'm a physical therapist, and for me, that was residency and doing those things.
Is that when it started for you? Was like in your residency where you were like, I want to be the top in my class? Or
Yeah, I think I was a triathlete going into it, and my first ever triathlon race, I won my age group by 8 minutes, and it was like regionals, and I thought I was hot stuff. Really, nobody else knew it was regionals either.
Yeah.
And just nobody showed up, and it was early days of triathlon.
Yeah.
But then, I started to be like, oh, I can be something. I can do something. And I had people in my life that also helped me and showed me that. My mom was a big part of that. She had been to Olympic trials for swimming and was really into competitiveness as well, and taught me that. But I think it can be really for any type of profession, but knowing Sam's origin story, when you work with Sam, when you see him at the track, I'm one of the things that I love. And when I first started working with professional athletes, the thing that was always amazing for me is after a meet, all the pros get together and just do a big workout.
Yeah.
You would think that, oh, great, I did this meet, like I've culminated, I've got what I've done. And I think when I first started working in this professional realm of runners and triathletes, I really just was blown away by the willingness to just then crush yourself after you hit a goal, you hit a PR. We did one of my favorite moments of my career was Sam did this Delaware mile where we did the Delaware mile challenge, and Coach Castagno put that together, did a great job. Sam came and set the record for the mile, and they had the track was just lined with people, and it was great. It was fireworks and all sorts of things. It was really cool.
Yeah, that was funny because Coach Castagno used to always be obsessed with there had never been a person that had broken the sub 4 minute mile in Delaware.
Yeah.
And he would annoy me about it all the time. And I never thought that it would actually ever line up with my racing schedule and, what my agent would let me do and, all the politics of it, but when I finally put all of that aside and was like, wait a second, this is actually something that I really want to do. Yeah. Who cares if it's the right thing to do? And it ended up being one of the most fulfilling races still of my career, was getting to be on my old high school track, breaking 4, winning that race and getting to be there and see so many people that were there in those early years. Steve, I couldn't be there, but, of course, Coach Castagno was there, and there's a lot of really important people to those stepping stones were there for sure. So that's super special.
And then right after it, Sam's ripping 400s, 600s, getting in there after it. And although, I think you're pretty good about celebrating some victories, you're also really good about just keeping your head down and working hard and being willing to put that in. And I think a lot of people say that they want to achieve a certain goal and they want to do something, but then when it comes down to the real hard work, they're not willing to put that in. And Sam, above many other people that I know, is definitely willing to put that work in. And
cheers, thank you.
Yeah, it's just that makes it a pleasure to work with. I know on the physical therapy side, one of the most fulfilling things is working with an athlete or any patient that's really dedicated to doing that. And one of the least motivating things is when somebody says they want to do something and then they don't put any effort in, and you're putting all this effort in. So I think,
but that goes the same thing for you then also, is what did we do after the workout?
Yeah, we did treatments.
We came in here at basically midnight.
Yeah.
And you treated me, and we made sure that my body was okay, and we made sure that, that hard day was going to not lead to an injury, that it wasn't going to turn into something that I didn't press the envelope too much. So to have someone that can match, that type of dedication, means the world to me, of course. And you don't find that, it is easy to want to just, stick to your schedule, and do the things. But it's I know that you're one of the best in the world at what you do because of that sort of dedication, is because athletes, will see that and word will spread, and that's the type of dedication. And I know you're not doing that every night, of course, but when it's necessary, you're there and you're doing it. And the same thing where it's that workout after the race, that's necessary to make your hard days really, really hard and making those easy days really, really easy. And I think that was a huge trend within the sport of running, is making those hard days really hard in order to get the biggest bang for your buck, and making then the easy days in between the workouts just days to then recover, get things right, tune things up, do your activations, do all your drills, do all the mundane stuff. But then when you're hitting it hard, make sure your hard days are hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before I take that to another point, I just want to make note of something that you said, because I think this is really good for runners to hear. And you said it to me before, and I use it for myself with my own running, that there are no substitutions and you can't pass the ball with running. A sport like an endurance sport like that, I think that is such a huge part, because there is no, I need a 2-minute break. You're in the middle of a 5K. You can't just pass unless you're in a relay, you can't pass the baton to somebody else and just say, hey, just run for me for a little bit. Yeah. It's you versus the clock versus your competitors. And I think that sometimes that can be really helpful for people to just dig deep and understand what that's like and know that they're doing it. And there is a team behind it. Behind every person, there's normally a team, but it's so refreshing to hear that, and like the analogy of no substitutions is really great for a sport like running. I just really like that. So I wanted to talk about that real quick, but then I wanted to kind of shift to it's fun talking about all the fun stuff too, but there's the flip side, and I think that having the goals and setting that and putting the hard days in is really important. I think even more important is when things aren't going well. What do you do? And obviously the sport of running is known for injuries, and Sam's had his fair share, some of it while we've gotten so close and gotten to know each other here. And so I love your perspective as an elite athlete. What does it take to overcome that adversity from an injury standpoint? And what have you learned that has helped you to not only get through an injury, but come out of it even going to the next level, from that 1% to the 0.1% to the 0.01%?
Yeah. There's been a lot of times in my career where, you're stuck in this seemingly never-ending one thing after the next flare-ups, whether it's because you are pushing and that competitiveness gets the best of you, and maybe you go a little too hard, and there are so many times where I've bit myself just because of stubbornness and leading to long-term injuries. And that comes with the territory of the pursuit of wanting to be your best and chase the best version of yourself. Like, that's going to come with it, is like learning how to fail also. And unfortunately, like, failure often comes with injuries. And I've been fortunate and unfortunate that almost all of my injuries are typically like tendon issues and muscle injuries and like things in that nature, and haven't had like any real bone problems or anything like that. Like, I certainly think that I overeat and make sure I'm getting like a very like wide-ranging diet to make sure that like there's nothing, like no stone that I'm missing in terms of like what I'm giving to my body. Like, I'm giving myself tons of sugars, protein, tons of carbs. And I think that does, help with bone health incredibly also. But you can speak more on that. Strength is the thing that has always gotten me out of injuries, is like getting stronger and going back to the basics and the little things. And that's where, finding the right physical therapist, finding the right person that can give you the protocols that can get you through. And it's the type of thing where it's like you need to commit yourself for those 6 weeks. Like, I'm pretty sure you taught me it was like the 6 weeks for strengthening, where you're actually going to like get any time. Is it 6 weeks?
Yeah, 6 to 8 weeks. When you start a strength training program, you're going to be able to lift more weights and do more with it. But until you actually see changes in the muscle, it's about 6 to 8 weeks of consistently doing the exercises.
Yeah, so, finding that strength training regime and like doubling down on it and doing the little things is the thing that have almost always gotten me out of injuries. Like, doing the soft tissue work, I've tried every single shockwave, hydrodissection, wind back machines, laser therapy. Like, I've done it all, and I've tried it all, and all that stuff is important, and it helps, and it keeps you going day in and day out. Yeah. But the thing that actually gets you out long term is the little strength, or it's the exercise, it's the hip mobility stuff, it's the glute bridges before you start your run. It's the little things consistently that all of a sudden you add into your routine to prevent stuff from happening and to get strong enough to then, this is probably a bad quote for this podcast, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that like there was a professional runner that once told me that it was a upperclassman in college told me, it was like one of these best, worst advice. I've told this one to you, where it's like the best runners are the best compensators. Like the best runners are the people that can compensate for their weaknesses the best.
Yeah.
And there is truth to it.
There is. And the challenge of that, it's a great statement, but the challenge is that...
I mean, at the time, he was just telling me, stop being a wimp and run through it, But
the challenge is you don't always know when you're compensating.
Yeah.
I think that's where the real issue is, that our body doesn't send a memo out. Be like, hey, guess what? Your glute med isn't firing.
Totally.
So you're just going to drop the pelvis a little bit, and your hip flexor will take up some of the tension. You'll be all right for another 50 miles until I'm just going to scream at you.
Yeah.
So it is the ability, but it's also checking in and being able to see, well, am I doing things that I'm not aware of? I think that's a part of it too, because this is something you and I have talked about, and this is not just for elite runners, for any level of runner. Consistency is the number one thing. Mm-hmm. There is no one workout. Mm-hmm. There is no one exercise that is going to make or break you.
The one workout is for your ego. The one workout is to try to take away any little bits of like insecurity or mental insecurity you might have. For sure I'm with you on that. And that is where I think what I found in my training and changing my regiment, like there have been times in my career where I felt like I was like stagnating, because there's a point where every professional runner, like you said, is like, it's not like it's just me that's finishing a race and then doing a track workout, Like the other guys I raced against that night, they did threshold work also,
Yes.
Like it wasn't just me being like some superhero, Like it is part of the culture is to get that work done. It's like you see NBA players doing the same thing. It's like after a game, they're hitting the weight room after, because that is the best time for them to get that done. Because if they do it maybe the day before or 2 days before when they're trying to recover, it's not the best time to, get those adaptations properly. But after a game when they've really stressed themselves, make sure you double down and, make that hard day a hard day so that you can properly recover in the 48 hours after. But I think, like I was saying, there comes a point where everyone's doing the same thing. It's just cut up differently, whether it's mile repeats, whether it's a 6 mile tempo run or 7 by mile, or it's, 10 by K, or it's a 15 mile long run or whatever, like on Sundays, or you're doing it on Wednesdays, like everyone's doing the same thing. Their coach just might think that they're doing it some special way because he's does it this little special way, And
really a lot of it has to like, who can do that the longest?
For sure. Right? And that's where the consistency always comes into play.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part. And one of the things I think that's really helpful, because I know, I'm sure, hopefully there's some elite runners listening to this, but I think it's a lot more recreational and physical therapists and those kind of things too. Talking about that consistency. The other thing when we talk about pros though, there's a misconception that a pro has time to do all of the exercises and to do all of the things. And while you probably have more time than many recreational athletes, there's a load management issue. So when I first started working with pros, I quickly realized I can't just give them a ton of things to do because they're running 90 miles a week. So even if they have time to do an exercise from a load management standpoint, I can't add all the little things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you're looking to go from the 1% to the 0.1% to the 0.01%, what are the things that you have seen in your career really help you from a most bang from your buck standpoint?
Yeah, well, what I was like saying before also was like when you there came a point where like I'm doing the same amount of training and you're stagnating, and you then have to go out and look for things that will give you that next percent or get you that 0.00 faster. And like one of those things was for me was like the gait analysis unit, like the Run DNA unit that we worked on together, was like figuring out my inefficiencies and my efficiencies and where I need to improve. And it's like, it's funny, like even like my dad, he was on the bike with me today when I'm home for Christmas here in Delaware. And he was just saying, he's like, yeah, it's so funny to like watch you run now and like how much stronger you are, how much more efficient you are than you were in college. You know, like I was still able to run at a high level in college, but I wasn't anywhere close to a professional level. And even when I was a professional running, I was competing with professionals, but I still wasn't at the world stage. I wasn't at the international level, you know? And I was desperate to continue to improve, but like you said, with load management, there's only so much you can do more. Like I can't just do 100 squats even though I want to, you know, or box jumps or whatever, you know. And then when I started doing the unit, like I hated it, you know, because it's uncomfortable and you're telling me to, you know, get your knee drive higher, and you know you're changing my back kick because I used to have this big lopey back kick, you know. And that's comfortable. You get comfortable the way you're running because that's how you're used to it. Like your body's going to naturally, when you're running, try to make it as easy as possible. But oftentimes that can also lead to very inefficient form in the process.
Yeah.
Where like with the big thing that we've talked about is how when I when I reach.
Yeah.
And it is incredible that in photos or after a good or a bad race, you can see in the photos or from the videos when the race goes from good to bad for me.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden I start reaching forward and when I lose that forward lean.
Yeah.
And we realize so quickly that I'm losing so many seconds, precious seconds, the difference between winning or losing, getting a medal or not getting a medal, qualifying for the Olympics or not qualifying for the Olympics, purely just in me leaning forward more and me focusing on my knee drive and these little things. And it's like, it was this light bulb moment for me, you know, like 5 years ago now when we started working together, where it was like, okay, I can do these things through the gait analysis unit stuff and see tangibly, hey, you're overstriding by this much on the right side versus left side is good. And that's why your high hamstring hurts. And that's why your pelvic tilt is off, you know, because I'm doing these small little motions. And then when I can do this stuff consistently and do these tests over and over and over again and focus on it and remember those little cues that you gave me, that's where I've gone from, you know, the 1% to the 0.0001%, you know?
Right.
And that's the hardest jump
That is.
to go to, because like I said, there's only so much talent. There's only so many squat jumps you can do. But I think the thing that anyone can do at any level from a recreational standpoint, whether it's, you know, I mean, I think that especially for the 5-hour marathon runner or the 3-hour marathon runner, they could see like a 10 to 20 minute improvement purely just because of getting a cue of, hey, you need to lean forward more. And that's so simple and so crazy.
Yeah.
That's something so small like that, if they can remember it, because all of a sudden when they start leaning back and they are all of a sudden using their hip flexors more or whatever, they're going to fatigue out so much quicker if they're just using the power muscles of the glutes and the hamstrings. And that's the same with me too. So it's something that is such a commonality between professionals to this level, and it's something that has been invaluable research for me. And, you know, I know you have hundreds of testimonials now from people and seeing the difference where it's like, all right, let's stop beating a dead horse here with doing mile repeats or 800s. Let's get to the roots of the problem.
Yeah. You just hit the nail on the head, getting to the root of the problem, but also the individualization aspect of it too, because it's not just you that has some of those issues, but what's going to be the biggest gain for you? Where are we going to get a 10% improvement from a 1% effort there?
Right.
That's where we really see, and it's a little bit, as you were talking, I was thinking of that saying, what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah.
Right. And it's whether you're saying, hey, I'm going to do my first marathon and I've done nothing but 5Ks. Okay, well, what got you to run 5Ks is not going to get you to run marathons. Mm-hmm. And if you've never looked at form, or if you've never been in the weight room, or if you've never thought about adding in some speed work, or you don't know where you should be running for your easy or slow pace, there's all these little things that can make a big difference, because running injuries are multifactorial. And it's not that there's just one way to get better, but you have to look and say, what is the best way that I can really get an exponential return from the efforts that I can do? Because the reality is we all want to just run.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to think about it. And we just want to go run and run what feels good.
Yeah, like I said, I hated it, because it's uncomfortable. It's different. You're using different muscles, like when you have done, like when you put the stick behind my legs to make sure I don't do my back kick, or it's like you put the little paper towel rolls to make sure that like I'm not overstriding, and these little stupid things to me where I'm like, come on, I know how to run.
I'm a pro runner here.
But
what
it's
like,
mean? But all of a sudden, there's this humility to it where it's like, okay, like swallow the ego, and all of a sudden, like it's gonna take you so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fun. It's so rewarding on my side to see those gains as well, and see where we just went out to a track session the other day, cold, rainy day, another sign of Sam's dedication here, and just looking at it, and he was so much better. And then we just fine-tuned just one little thing, and now he's at the point where he can make that gain, and it makes such a big difference, where his next couple reps looked just much smoother and faster and felt better. So, I think it is looking at those little things, but realizing as a runner, as a coach, as a physical therapist, you don't have to do all of them at once. You can really just do a little bit here and a little bit there, give it some time to sink in, and then over years, 5 years ago, we were talking about this earlier, the gap versus the gain. Like, look at the gain that you've made in the last 5 years and where you're at, and that took time and consistency, but now you're competing like consistently on that elite world stage, which is really fun. And I give you a ton of credit for sticking with it, because some people really do. Obviously Sam had overall good form, and when we changed some of his form, he was very ingrained in it. Somebody running 60 miles a week, 70 miles a week at the time, it's you're pretty used to it there. But the fact that he stuck with it when he didn't like it is a testament there, because there's some people that you change their form and instantly they feel better, and they're like, one of my favorite things to do is say, run your old way, and they're like, no, I can't, I'll never run that way again. That's like the most rewarding thing for me. But
that certainly wasn't me.
But the consistency of like sticking with it even when that's not the case, that's huge. So along those same kind of lines, earlier this year you were talking to me about you did some coaching as well, and you're an athlete that's coached. You work with teams, you work with strength trainers, physical therapists, you work all this. Like, what is it? What's the benefit for you of having a coach, and what's really been your perspective when you were a coach about maybe how to incorporate some of the stuff we already have been talking about?
Yeah, well, I'm very much an amateur when it comes to coaching, in terms of understanding. I think I'm very experienced when it comes to like the inspiration side, and understanding maybe how to train like a college level athlete, but I'm just training some of like my best friends that were not runners, that like played soccer in high school, they were frat guys in college, didn't run a step, and then have now want to find an outlet.
Yeah.
And they want to, feel empowered. And that's what I think a lot of people get hooked on for running, because of this empowerment, this euphoric feeling you get when all of a sudden you can go out for a run and be like, yeah, I just ran for an hour straight. I just ran for, 30 minutes straight without stopping. And that would be something that would be unheard of. And it's been a process for me to like learn and listen and, figuring out, like you said, I think the load management stuff is the stuff that I'm still like learning quite a bit, and how to do that properly. And it's certainly something that I wouldn't say I'm the best, I'm far, far, far away from being the best coach when it comes to like X's and O's and the load management. But I think where I excel is like when I'm able to listen to the athlete, and I'm able to listen to how hard their effort was, and then be able to then administer a long run or a workout like when I know their body is ready for it. And I think when they are enjoying their training because they're consistently feeling good and they don't feel like they're just constantly dragging themselves out every day, that's kind of the key to success I found with these runners who, like went from the couch to, running a sub 4-hour marathon. And that was a huge accomplishment for him.
Yeah.
And I was, ecstatic for him.
We'd be billionaires if we could figure out that exact point when somebody should do their next exercise.
Yeah.
Right? That would be, I wish that there was a number.
What, you don't think the Garmin watch is telling you 15 hours of rest?
There's help in those measurements. I'm a huge wearable device guy myself. I've looked at that, but I think there is a lot of value in a coach being able to give you some external perspective.
Oh my gosh, yeah. If I was coaching myself, I would just want to light the world on fire every day, and I'd be injured so quickly. And I think a coach is meant to push you, but it's more important to know when to hold you back.
Yeah.
And that's something that, Coach Hunter with Tinman Elite, that's one of her greatest qualities, is understanding that it's the sum of everything we do. It's like we were saying before. It's like, hey, if I can keep you healthy for a year, I know you're going to light the world on fire.
Yeah.
I don't care how amazing this month is leading up to this first race. And I think that's what a lot of people get obsessed with. And I know I get caught up within it. And I would say I'm caught up in it right this minute we're filming this podcast, is being obsessed with how amazing can this next month of training be, instead of just trusting the sum of everything I've done.
Yeah.
And, just figuring out for anyone that's self-coached or doing it themselves, I think that figuring out how to get advice from people and learning from others, I think being a constant sponge is so important. And I think that has been something I tell people all the time, is you never want to stagnate, and consistency is key, but also I think there's something to be said about constantly adapting and changing what you're doing in your program in order to continue to grow and continue to build. It's very easy to get caught up in okay, my long run is this far this week and I felt good the week before, so I'm going to keep doing that in my marathon build up. Versus maybe throwing in a little speed work in there, and that will give you a bump, or doing hill sprints, or, if there's something else to stimulate your body, in the smart way with load management and incorporating it in the right way, I think goes a really long way, is getting out of your comfort zone in those moments to not stagnate.
Yeah, it's a science and an art.
Totally.
I think there's a lot of mix between the two, and the best coaches are the ones that get to know the athletes the best and then adapt the plans to who they are and figure that out. I know, you do the coaching, the Hammer and Axe coaches, Coach Hunter, Hunters, all it, a lot of it, and just being around that world is really the adaptation and applying the art and science together, which is a lot of fun. I'm a science geek, right? I love the physiology. When we talk about consistency in the long thing, I think about, so many recreational runners think that they can train for a marathon in 16 weeks. And because that's what the plans are. If you go online and you start Googling plan, there's 16-week plan. It takes months, years of preparing to do a marathon there. Yeah. And even if you have a 16-week period leading up to a race, or you have the month before you're trying to get qualifying times, it really is everything before it, because it takes a long time. You don't get increased microvascularization of your muscles in a week or so. Yeah. You do a long run, and it takes 3 or 4 weeks for the full benefits of that to kick in. Yeah. So it takes months and years of training. And you're looking, I'd say even expand out and look at the last 5 years of your training, where you've come from. And when you're getting ready for a race, having that confidence to know, I've had 5 years of just professional level training in all aspects of the word. So
I got a question for you that I was interested in, and it's kind of funny because when I've you mentioned it before, I've seen a ton of people, different types of massage therapists, dry needling experts, chiropractors, you name it, and it's funny how I feel within the first 5 minutes, I know if it's going to be a good session or a bad session. like before they even like start treating me, I feel like I know what I'm going to get myself into. And for me, it's, are they going to take the time? Like, is it the type of thing where I'm going to go in there and say, hey, my calf hurts and, you know, my hamstring's tight, and they're gonna be like, okay, get on the table, you know, and then they just get right to work, you know? Or are they gonna take the time to like assess and look at everything and, you know, make me go through the movements, check my alignment and those things? It's like, there's a reason I like, you know, primarily work right now, like with you and Sue, like at Build PT in Louisville, Colorado. And it's because like, she doesn't care, like you don't care, like if I say this hurts, without looking at the big picture, it's pointless. And I wanted to know from your point of view, like, what are you looking for in particular when you're doing that initial assessment in terms of like, from an injury standpoint? I'm just curious, like, what's going through your head when I walk in and I say something like that, where it's like, what are you looking for?
I think it starts with curiosity, like you're saying. I think that's the critical step. And if you're a provider, and no matter what level of athletes you want to work with, you have to be curious, and then you have to be willing to be right or wrong, and to know why you're right or wrong with that. I think test retest, like you're describing, is the most important thing any provider, any background can do. Is really just try to understand, because you don't even need, there's pattern recognition to start, to take a step back. Pattern recognition is a critical aspect of the care, and learning those patterns where somebody that is experiencing it, if they just tell you to get on the table, in their head they have a pattern. They know, if you tell me it hurts right here, I know that this is likely the issue, and they're just going to go right to it. I want to constantly learn and change my pattern recognition to be able to get quicker or more effectively to the right thing. So I'm really curious, is this a symptom or a cause?
Okay.
And I want to really know, okay, when Sam tells me that his Achilles is bothering him, what are all the other things that could put stress on that, right? We start making a hypothesis in our head right away. You give us more information. That's why talking to somebody is one of the most important parts. When we do a gait analysis, I spend half an hour talking to them before I touch them, before I do anything. Then we do the runner readiness assessment. Then we do the gait. So I kind of danced around that a little bit, but I really want to know what is really driving this. Because I know, and every medical or fitness professional knows, that we don't have unlimited time. We have to get down to something. But if you don't measure what you're getting down to, you could be wasting that whole time.
Speaking of that time, and this is like my biggest pet peeve with like PTs, massage therapists, like everybody seemingly in the industry, that, and everybody does it. Nobody doesn't do it, and I don't get it, is like, when you're treating and you're like, okay, get up and walk and see how it feels. It's like, it never does anything. I'm so confused on like, unless I go out and go for my run, I'm not going to know how it feels. Like I will never feel like all of a sudden like this revelation. And like, I don't get like, is that just like something everyone is taught in school? Like you have to do that? Like, I don't get it, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's probably just like my stubbornness coming out, but
right, and I do that a lot with you.
Yeah,
all the time. We do that like 10 times a session. But we're asking you to say how you feel. Like, I mean, even today, we did a treatment earlier today. We did something, and you said, "Yeah, that feels different." I don't need it to be like, yes, it's better, right? I don't.
Yeah.
That's not the goal, but we're actually looking at even more. What we should be. Like when I look at your face, I look at you do a calf raise, do you turn out? Do you go as high? There's lots of little things that we don't even tell you.
So it doesn't even matter if what I say, it's like what I'm actually going to look and do.
It's both.
Is a big part of it also.
Yeah, it's your hesitancy with it. It's if you get off the table and you're tiptoeing or you're limping, that's that pattern recognition. Like we're on the physical therapy side, we a lot of times say we're movement professionals, right? We look at this, we're experts at looking at movement. I can look and say, yeah, his calf raise looks better versus not.
Interesting.
And a lot of times I'll have some things that I can point to on a video and tell you why it looks better. And sometimes it just looks better to us there. And we have to be careful of confirmation bias because I think that can be a real thing.
But I think that's kind of where my pet peeve comes from it. And it's like, obviously, like with our long relationship, like I'm okay and comfortable enough to tell you like, no, I don't feel any different, or like, hey, like I don't,
because it doesn't help me at all,
you know what I mean?
If you don't tell me the truth.
But I feel like if it was my first time coming in, or it's like, hey, I just like paid for this massage, like I'm gonna be like, yeah, feel great, and it's like, feel really shitty, you know, in reality. But you know, I'm just like, I don't really have a good relationship with you, and I don't want to come off as me sounding like I had a bad experience here, you know.
Well, so I would say two things. If you're going to somebody that doesn't do that, walk out.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Like, because they have it in their head that they know what's wrong and they're not going to find.
I mean, I told you before, and it's something that like also like when we started working together full time is like, and I figured out with you, like you didn't bring an ego to your work. And I feel like that is something where it's very easy in, you know, when you're helping people and you can make people feel good, there is inherently like a narcissistic tendencies that can come with that, where it's like, oh, I can fix people, I can heal people. And I've seen some of the most egotistical people I've ever seen in my life, you know, have been people that where I've been sitting on a table and they're sitting there being like, oh yeah, I know exactly, like you're going to be running this so much quicker after this, you know, and they really, really believe it, you know, whether they even checked like if my SI was off or even looked at what I asked them to, you know, like they know all the answers. And I think what you said about that, you're curious, you know, and I think the day that you stop being curious is the day that you will stagnate, you know, in your practice with it. And for anyone,
even yours,
you know,
the day you stop being curious about how can you be better.
Absolutely.
Right? That's whatever your profession is for people listening. If you're not curious, if you're not willing to be wrong, you don't really care about getting to the next level.
For sure.
Right? Yeah. I say I don't want to be right. I want the truth. I don't, you know, you can tell me, right? And you do tell me times, and I appreciate it. I'm like, great, okay. Well, I'm not going to waste my time doing that anymore because that actually made you feel worse. Yeah. And like I, you know, treat a lot of high level people, and I am always willing to be wrong with that because I'm then going to find the right thing. But if I wasn't measuring, then I don't know if the first thing I did or the second thing or the third thing or the fourth thing, I don't know if that was right. And we have to constantly be checking.
I would hate to do this. Like I would be like, I coach at a very small level, but like the stress of all of a sudden like having someone's trust of being like, hey, do these exercises and then let's see how you feel. You know what I mean? And then they could come back and say, I still feel really shitty or I still feel really bad. You know, it's like that is... There's so much trust, and then obviously like people's happiness are so tied in to their ability to move and perform, and it's like they're the two parts about physical therapy and this practice where it's like you're getting people that are miserable coming in here all the time, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, like I've been at my lowest walking through the doors of buildings like this. Yes. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's a crazy world for sure. Just having to deal with that.
Yeah, it's the same as yours. You have to be willing to put yourself out there, and it takes a lot of you.
And this goes back to the competitiveness and confidence to say, I think this actually is going to work.
Yeah, I believe in this, worse, and I'm willing to tell you. A lot of times when we're teaching physical therapists, we say, make sure you do a cliffhanger at the end of the treatment. And explain a little bit of like, hey, we did this. Here's what I expect to see. If we don't, then I want to work on this next.
Interesting.
And that is a way...
Like you hold on to hope for the next thing. It's like, hey, there's always something else we can look at.
Because there are.
That makes sense.
Everything's so interconnected. If you... It's... You know, maybe 8 times out of 10, you are going to see a certain pattern, you know, that 80-20 principle where it's really going to be one way. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to get surprised where it's like, wow, that should have helped Sam, and that didn't. What can I do to help Sam next time? Well, if this isn't it, then I want to go to this, because it's just knowing anatomy and physiology and stress and mechanics and all of that stuff and putting it together. And it's like, what is, because a lot of it's basics, right? I think people can make themselves seem more important than they are by trying to make it seem complex, but it's basics. Like, something hurts because the stress was more than your body can handle. Yeah. Okay. What are all the things that can put stress on it? Figure those out, try to get them better, use one at a time, and all of a sudden, like, you're going to find one that works.
Yeah, you do that now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. I mean, so Sam's been here for almost a week now, and we tried some things in the early part of the week, and there was temporary improvement, but not great. And then the last 2 days we've seen a little improvement, and it was willing to say, we tried something different that we haven't done in a while. We did some instrument assisted soft tissue with the wind back, and we hadn't done that before, but it's because we were willing to experiment and be wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel like Sam and I could probably talk for a long time, so I think we're gonna have to have Sam back on. So I was gonna, before we kind of figure out a little bit more, any acknowledgments you want to do or ways to get a hold of you, I did want to do one little fun segment because of your background story, and I knew where you were gonna go with that. I come from swimming and triathlon background, and I was saying earlier, so I want to hear your thoughts on PR versus PB.
Okay.
Because, all right, in swimming world, everything is a PR. And then I get into running, and everyone starts saying PB.
I was going to say PB is definitely a runner thing.
That's a totally, but PR, so if you're not familiar with the acronyms, PR, personal record, PB, personal best. And a lot of times, I feel like if you look at a sportscaster or something, they're going to say PR. But if you talk to a runner, they're going to say PB.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, what do you say if you get a new fastest time in an event? Is it a PR or PB?
Yeah, I'm definitely on the PB side of the spectrum now, where in terms of, like, when I think back at an Instagram post or like a Strava, post-race reflection, it's like, 13, 12, 5K, new PB,
Yeah.
And I don't know when that transition happened, because I certainly used to be a PR. Like, when I thought back at, I set my 25-meter breaststroke PR.
Right. When did it transition? Was it, maybe it's not just a sport, maybe it's a time lapse?
I don't know, but I know people care about when people say PRs in running. I know there will be some PR police, sorry, I should say PB police, where it's police. No.
Yeah, it's a PR.
It's PB. So I certainly I understand where this debate comes from for sure, but I don't know when my transition happened.
So maybe comments, please, or things please weigh in and leave us some comments or thoughts on PR versus PB and give a little rationale.
Are they the same thing?
I would think so. I don't know. I mean, I say PR.
What is the differentiating?
Personal record or personal best?
Yeah, but is there any difference between your best or your record?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody grammatically can chime in there too.
Yeah, I don't know if best is something where it has to do. No, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it might be a more runner centric thing versus and our runners solely isolated on this.
Yeah,
triathletes, I think it's PR.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I know the Australians and the Brits, they're very strong PB people.
Yeah,
and I would say that they have a very strong. They're a lot of the running culture revolves around Australian and British people. I'd say, I feel like they are at the crux of a lot of trends. Before the U.S. is has them. I think they're very involved in the sport, and I think the way they say PB, I can't do an accent, but the way they say PB, maybe that was just sounded way cooler than clicked. PR.
Yeah.
So that'll be my theory. I'll go with there.
All right. So Sam is saying a tribute to the Australians and the Europeans and the British there they're Team GB, maybe GB and PB. That's. I'll ask my friend Gareth. Maybe he's got a little.
Nice,
he works with the diving team. So, all All right, so Sam, I think I definitely want to have you on again, and would love to talk even a little bit more about how to follow running, because I think you're one of the most connected people. Whenever we go to an event, you know everybody type thing. Sam's also really good about keeping me up to date.
I'm just old. I'm just old now. That's why.
Well, that makes me much older.
The community in running is a special one for sure. And
so
I cherish getting to go to these events and meet the new people in the community. Like, I love knowing my competitors. As much as I want to beat them, I also, respect their craft and their commitment, and certainly it's, I love getting to see them at races.
So let's have another conversation about that.
Yeah, sure.
But if you have a chance to, if you want to do any acknowledgments, or where can people find you, listen to you more, learn more about what's going on, keep up with you. I think hopefully people see that, just like I am, you should be a huge fan of Sam Parsons and follow him. And it's like, follow him along.
You could also be a big hater of me. That's all right too. I'm used to. I'm.
Any press is good press.
I've seen it all and heard it all. But I'd say I think following our team account, Tinman Elite, on Instagram. We try to post YouTube videos, and our whole mission with our team was to push the sport of running forward. And I guess, like, through being vulnerable, through being willing to showcase and, share as much as we possibly could with what workouts we're doing. I'm on Strava, so if anyone wants to, look at my training that I'm doing, like, I probably overshare on Strava with pictures and, giving details of what my workouts are and things. I know a lot of people can be very, like, secretive with that stuff. And then over COVID, I just remember getting a message from a kid that was, struggling with inspiration and getting out the door. And he was like, hey man, like, I don't know if you ever thought of it, but I'd love to see where you're running and just see, maybe that's a little creepy, but see that you're getting out the door too, and that one kid was enough for me to all of a sudden be like, okay, I need to start sharing everything I'm doing. And I don't care what maybe little competitive advantage I might be giving to someone else, because I know that little bit of competitive advantage, if I am giving out any for showcasing my training, definitely doesn't outweigh whatever I gave to that kid to get out the door, So I'd say follow me on Strava, Sam Parsons, and I hope it would come up, even though Strava search algorithm is awful. I'd say follow our team account would be, like, the best two ways to follow. And really appreciate all the support. Thanks for having me on, Dougie. Like I said early on in the podcast, but I certainly wouldn't still be running at this point, I can confidently say, if it wasn't for you and it wasn't for your commitment. So obviously, whenever you need me on the podcast, I'm going to be there. And if anyone out there is ever in need of help, I think there's some of the best physical therapists you have on your staff here at Omega Project. And the Run DNA device is some of the best in the business. And Doug is, in fact, not paying me to say this. I think that's... I think that wraps it up for me. Yeah, appreciate you having me.
And you taught me this too. So subscribe,
like, comment,
subscribe. Sam taught me all that. But thank you, Sam, for having me on. I mean, this is just special, and it's just always, anytime I get with Sam is a great time. So thanks for being on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, all the best. Thanks, Dougie.
Like what you hear? Leave a review of the show wherever you listen, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Run DNA helps runners and running specialists through education and technology to identify each runner's unique injury profile to avoid setbacks and maximize results. The Run DNA podcast is produced by Ace Running LLC. The Run DNA podcast is intended for educational purposes only. No clinical decision-making should be based solely on one source. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can occur. Always seek the guidance of qualified medical professionals before making healthcare decisions. Find us online at rundna.com.